Pick up your phone. Just hold it for a second. That rectangle of glass and aluminum in your hand right now. That thing you use to check your bank account, order your food, navigate your commute, talk to your family. That thing you probably can't go 4 hours without is built on a foundation so fragile that a single piece of equipment in a single factory in a small city in the Netherlands is the only reason it works at all. One machine, one factory, one company, and almost nobody outside of a very specific circle of engineers and geopolitical analysts is talking about what happens if that machine goes down. Not slows down, goes down. I want you to sit with that for a moment before we go further, because I'm telling you, when I first started pulling on this thread, I did not expect where it would lead. I thought I was researching microchips. What I found was the single most consequential vulnerability in the architecture of modern civilization, hiding in plain sight, inside a machine that most people have never heard of, doing something most people cannot even visualize, and doing it in a way that has made the entire world completely and totally dependent on its continued operation. What if I told you the future of every digital device you own, every bank account you hold, every grocery store that keeps its shelves stocked, every hospital that keeps its systems running, rests on one machine built by one company? And that machine is shockingly, almost insanely vulnerable. That machine is called an EUV lithography system. The company that makes it is called ASML. And by the time this video is over, you are never going to look at your phone the same way again. In the next 13 minutes, I'm going to walk you through 3 things that kept me up at night after I researched this. First, what this machine actually is, what it does, and why the fact that only one company on Earth can build it should terrify you. Second, how deeply every single system you depend on, your bank, your job, the supply chain that keeps food on your shelves, the grid that keeps your lights on, is woven into the continued operation of this one piece of hardware. And third, the specific, documented, real-world threats to that machine that nobody in mainstream conversation is seriously addressing. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to dramatize. I'm going to show you the architecture of our absolute dependence, the engineering decisions that got us here, and the precise shape of the single point of failure that sits at the center of everything you call modern life. Stay with me, because this one is different. Let me start with something that sounds like science fiction but is completely, verifiably real. Inside the ASML facility in Eindhoven, Netherlands, there is a machine that uses light, specifically extreme ultraviolet light, to draw patterns onto silicon wafers that are smaller than a virus. We are talking about features measured in nanometers. A nanometer is 1/billionth of a meter. The period at the end of a sentence is roughly 500,000 nanometers wide. The patterns this machine draws on a chip are around 5 to 3 nanometers. That is not a typo. That is the actual scale of what we are talking about. When I first tried to visualize this, I realized there is no good human scale analogy for it, because nothing in everyday human experience operates at this resolution. It is like trying to describe a color that doesn't exist. The machine is not just precise, it is operating at the absolute physical limit of what matter and light allow. To generate the extreme ultraviolet light it needs, the machine fires a laser, one of the most powerful lasers ever built for a commercial application, at tiny droplets of molten tin, each one about the size of a human red blood cell, falling at 70 meters per second. It hits each droplet twice. The first pulse flattens it into a disk. The second pulse vaporizes it, converting it into plasma, which then emits the EUV light that is used to draw the circuits. That process happens 50,000 times per second, continuously, without stopping. I'm telling you, when I first researched this, I couldn't believe what I was reading. This machine is not just advanced engineering, It is practically magic, and it costs between $150 and $400 million per unit, depending on the configuration. Each one weighs approximately 180 tons. It takes a dedicated cargo plane just to ship one, and in many cases multiple flights, because the machine has to be disassembled into hundreds of thousands of components before it can be transported. It has more than 100,000 individual parts. It requires a team of highly specialized ASML engineers to install and calibrate on site, a process that can take months. And it needs a cleanroom environment so sterile that even a single dust particle landing on the silicon wafer during the process could destroy the entire chip being fabricated. The air in the room where this machine operates is cleaner than the air in an operating theater. Thousands of times cleaner. Now here's the question I kept coming back to as I dug into this. How did humanity become so utterly reliant on a single piece of hardware for its entire digital existence? The answer is not conspiracy. It is physics. EUV lithography is the only currently viable technology that can print circuits at the scale required for modern chips. Full stop. Every alternative that was explored over a 30-year period of research, including X-ray lithography, electron beam lithography, and others, either couldn't reach the required precision at commercial scale or couldn't do it fast enough to be economically viable. ASML didn't win the market by undercutting competitors. They won it by being the only company on Earth that solved a physics problem that nobody else could solve. And that is where the fragility begins. Now let me connect this machine to your life. Not in the abstract, directly. Every time you tap your card at a grocery store, a chip processes that transaction. Every time an ATM dispenses cash, a chip authorizes it. Every time the stock market executes a trade, chips are doing the calculation. Every time a hospital monitor reads your vitals, a chip is interpreting the signal. The chips in question, the ones that run all of these systems, can only be manufactured using EUV lithography. There is no workaround. There is no older technology that produces a comparable result at scale. It baffled me to learn that if ASML stopped producing these machines tomorrow, the entire global technology industry would begin to seize up within months. Not years, months. Because the existing inventory of chips would be consumed faster than any stockpile could compensate for, and the pipeline for new ones would simply stop filling. Think about what I just said in practical terms for a second. The US financial system runs on chips. The Federal Reserve systems run on chips. Every major bank's core infrastructure runs on chips. The digital payment rails that move trillions of dollars per day run on chips. Your supply chain runs on chips. The logistics software that tells a truck driver where to go runs on chips. The inventory systems that tell a distribution center what to ship and when run on chips. The automated systems in the warehouses that physically move the goods run on chips. The power grid runs on chips. Every smart substation, every grid management system, every load balancing algorithm that keeps the lights on runs on chips. The military runs on chips. Guidance systems, communications, radar, satellite networks, drone operations, secure command infrastructure, all of it built on silicon that only exists because of one machine in the Netherlands. And I haven't even mentioned AI yet. The entire artificial intelligence revolution. Everything from the large language models reshaping how information works, to the computer vision systems being deployed in hospitals and border security and autonomous vehicles, is built on a specific class of chips called GPS and AI accelerators. And every single cutting-edge version of those chips is manufactured using EUV. No EUV, no advanced AI. No advanced AI means every sector of the economy that is currently being restructured around AI, and that is most of them, suddenly loses the computational substrate it's being built on. Now here's the thing that I found most unsettling when I was researching this. ASML is a monopoly, not because of market manipulation, not because of anti-competitive behavior, but because of accumulated human knowledge that cannot be replicated quickly. The company draws on expertise from 5,000 suppliers across multiple countries. The mirrors inside an EUV machine are so precisely ground that they are the flattest surfaces ever manufactured by human hands, maintained at a smoothness measured in fractions of a single atom. That knowledge lives inside ASML. It lives inside specific engineers. It lives inside supplier relationships that took decades to build. You cannot replicate that in 5 years if something goes wrong. You probably cannot replicate it in 10. China has been trying to build a domestic EUV equivalent for years, with essentially unlimited state funding behind the effort. They are still not close to what ASML was producing commercially a decade ago. That is the scale of the knowledge gap we are talking about. So what happens when the brain of our global digital society has a single point of failure? That's not a rhetorical question. That is an engineering problem. And nobody has a satisfying answer for it. Here is where I want you to really pay attention, because this is the part of my research that genuinely disturbed me. Let's talk about what can actually go wrong. The most obvious threat is geopolitical. ASML manufactures in the Netherlands, but the chips made by ASML machines are predominantly fabricated in Taiwan by a company called TSMC, which manufactures the most advanced chips in the world for Apple, Nvidia, AMD, Qualcomm, and essentially every major technology company on the planet. Taiwan sits 100 miles off the coast of mainland China. China has claimed Taiwan as its sovereign territory for decades. The geopolitical tension there is not theoretical. It is active, it is escalating, and it is the single most discussed flashpoint in global strategic planning right now. If anything interrupts chip fabrication in Taiwan, and I want to be clear, I am not predicting that. I am describing a documented risk that the US government, the EU, and every major tech company is actively wargaming. The downstream effects would hit every system I described in the previous section simultaneously. Not sequentially. Simultaneously. I started to visualize the cascading failures when I was deep in this research, and it was genuinely chilling. You lose advanced chip production in Taiwan. Within months, the pipeline of new chips for servers, phones, cars, and industrial equipment starts to run dry. Within a year, you are looking at rationing of computational resources. Within 2 years, systems that depend on regular hardware refresh cycles start to degrade. And this isn't theory. This is a design flaw that was built into the global economy over 40 years of optimization for efficiency over resilience. But the geopolitical threat is not even the most unsettling one to me. The cyber threat is. ASML's machines are connected. They have to be, because the companies using them need real-time data on machine performance, uptime, and calibration. ASML technicians often monitor and support machines remotely, across borders, through encrypted connections. That connectivity is a vulnerability. In 2018, it was publicly reported that ASML had experienced intellectual property theft, with a former employee having taken proprietary source code and technology to a competitor backed by Chinese state interests. That was the theft of knowledge. Now imagine not theft, but destruction. A sophisticated state-level cyber attack targeting the control software of EUV machines globally, not to steal the technology, but to corrupt the calibration data, to introduce subtle errors into the fabrication process that only become apparent weeks later when entire production runs of chips are found to be defective. You would not know it happened immediately. The machines would appear to be running. The chips would appear to be produced. And then, weeks later, systems that depend on those chips would start to behave erratically. The damage would already be done. And then there's the human threat, which is the one that baffles people when I explain it. The engineers who can actually build, install, calibrate, and repair these machines are extraordinarily rare. We are talking about a global population of perhaps a few thousand people who have the specific, deeply specialized knowledge required to keep EUV systems operational. These people took years, sometimes decades, to develop that expertise. They cannot be replaced quickly. If ASML were to experience a significant attrition of its senior engineering workforce, whether through retirement, poaching, or any other cause, the institutional knowledge required to maintain these machines at the required level of precision would take years to rebuild. Are we just sleepwalking into an era where the fate of civilization is decided by the uptime of one factory in the Netherlands? Because from where I'm sitting, after spending weeks in this research, the honest answer to that question is yes. That is exactly what we have done. We optimized for performance. We optimized for cost. We optimized for speed. And somewhere in that process, we forgot to optimize for survival. Here is what I keep coming back to at the end of all of this. We built something extraordinary. Human beings looked at the laws of physics, found the absolute edge of what matter and light allow, and then built a machine that operates at that edge, reliably, commercially, continuously, at a scale that produces billions of chips per year. That is genuinely one of the most remarkable things our species has ever done. And in doing it, we created the most sophisticated single point of failure in the history of organized civilization. Not because we were careless, because we were brilliant, because the very specialization and optimization that made this technology possible is the same force that made the dependency inevitable. Every system I've covered on this channel, the financial ledger, the physical grid, the logistics web, the digital payment rails, they all converge on this. They all run on silicon. And silicon requires ASML. That is the bottom of the stack. That is where the foundation actually sits. Not in a bank, not in a server farm, in a factory in Eindhoven. This is the phantom ledger, asking you to reconsider the invisible foundations of your world. If you found this unsettling, good. It should be unsettling. Hit subscribe, because the next video goes even deeper into where these chips are actually made, and why the geography of chip fabrication is a more dangerous geopolitical fault line than most people are willing to admit. But before you go, I want to leave you with one question. Knowing everything you just heard, knowing that the phone in your hand exists because of a single machine, in a single factory, maintained by a few thousand people, sitting at the intersection of the world's most dangerous geopolitical tensions. How secure does that feel right now? Think about that.